since first interim, but I'm very pleased to be here tonight to present the 2015-16 adopted budget for all of you. It was a very exciting and challenging budget to build this year, but with a collaborative effort of truly all departments, Ed Services, Student Services, HR, and Business. I think we built a budget and an LCAP that we're very, very proud of. So the very first thing that I want to start with is kind of just start with the very basics of reading your budget. You all have a binder in front of you, and I realize that it's not something that you probably is extremely familiar or in a format that's familiar to you. So the very first thing that I wanted to do is just walk you through how to read through that budget. So you'll notice if you open it up, the very first thing that you'll see is something that looks like this. In the top right-hand corner, here, you will see that it says Form 01, and form is another word for fund. So this is Fund 1. That's the very first thing that you'll open to. And Fund 1 is what we tend to spend most of our time with. That's what our presentation is built on, because that's where our unrestricted dollars lie. Cynthia Martin just came up here and talked about bond. Bond funds are in Fund 21 if you wanted to see those dollars that are later in your budget, and then the state matching, that's in Fund 35. So just so you know, when we go through, the funds are separated by those colored tabs. Right here in the middle, in the top, it says general fund. So if you want to know which fund you're looking at, and you didn't know Fund 1 was the general fund, the title's right there in the middle. Okay. And then, so next, you'll notice that it shows you a comparison of 2014-15 estimated actuals, where we think we're going to end this current year, versus 15-16 adopted budget. This is what we're really going to look at. And Fund 1, you'll notice, has unrestricted columns, restricted columns, and then total columns. So when we go through the presentation, we'll talk a lot about unrestricted, restricted versus total. Just so you know, when reading the document, if you want to compare my presentation to the numbers, left to right, that's how that reads. And then top to bottom, we start with revenues here, and all revenue sources for the general fund. LCFF, that's what we're going to spend a lot of time on, which you'll hear a lot about. That's because that's a huge portion of our budget. You'll notice in comparison to total revenue that we're looking at $202 million, $156 million is made up from that LCFF money, and you'll see it's in the unrestricted column. So balance you'll see right there is where we where you can compare the numbers to our anytime balance. So I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of how to read these budgets, since the format's probably not familiar to you. So in an overview, this budget that you're about to see was built on the most accurate information at the time, which is the governor's May revision. Since then, the state has actually approved its budget, and there have been changes that I'll note along the way, but it was built on the most accurate information at the time, which was 1.02% COLA, that stuck. LCFF, which we'll get into quite a bit of, is all of the components, but the main one that I want to point out is the gap fund is 53%. That is one of the things that has changed since the May revision. The state budget actually came out with 51% as the approved gap percentage, and I'll show you what that means in a later slide. But just know to our district, that's about $500,000 difference. We'll be receiving $500,000 less than we originally anticipated when we built this budget, if everything else was constant. LCAP, I just want to mention this. LCAP is not to be confused with LCFF. The Local Control Accountability Plan is a qualitative plan of what the district's going to look like next year programmatically, and how we're going to close the achievement gap between our unduplicated pupils, which are socioeconomically disadvantaged, FOSS students, and English learners, how we're going to close the achievement gap between them and the other students. LCFF, as I mentioned, is the general fund revenues, but this budget goes hand in hand with that LCAP plan. Absolutely. So first we'll talk revenue. So LCFF is comprised of all of these things. Our base grant, which we'll talk about, that's our straight per ADA amount that we get for every student that we have. The supplemental grant that we receive, that's for our unduplicated count of pupils that I just mentioned, the population of them. Concentration grant, we receive, all districts that have an unduplicated count percentage of 55% or more receives extra money for these students, and that comes in the form of that concentration grant. We also receive augmentation grant money for K-3 and 9-12 class size reductions. Transportation and TIG, which TIG is an old Tier 3 program that stands for Targeted Instructional Improvement Grant, and we receive money from that. And then Career Tech Education. So let's get into the actual dollars of those items. So first is the base grant, right? Here's our projected, remember everything's built on what we expect to happen. Our projected 15-16 ADA by grade span is this. And everything I'm about to talk about is our targeted revenue. And let me explain that really quick. If you remember last time, the state came out with targeted revenue for 2020-2021. So they say, here's where we want to fund you. So they go through this huge calculation of revenue, but they say not for right now, but for 2020-21. And then they tell you what your minimum funding guarantee is. So you have like a ceiling and a floor. And the gap funding is how much in between are they actually going to give you, okay? So what we're talking right now is targeted. This is what our target 2021 per ADA amount is by grade span. So the total targeted funding that we should be receiving in base grant dollars is this $137 million. Carry over that $137 million right here, and the supplemental add-on for our population. Just so you know, the projected unduplicated percentage is 71.87%. We expect almost 72% of our students to be part of that socioeconomically disadvantaged English learners or foster youth, okay? So the supplemental money is what we get for that population of students. This concentration add-on of $11.6 million is the percentage over 55% that are that population, and about $1.7 million for that TIG and transportation. Included in this $137 million is the K-3 CSR and the 9-12 augmentation that I mentioned. So our total targeted funding is $171 million for LCFF. But that's not how much we're going to get. So see, that's this dollar amount up here of our target funding. Down here is our hold harmless amount. So the minimum funding guarantee of $139 million. And then there's the gap. So the difference between what we're going to receive and what our minimum funding guarantee is almost $32 million. Of the $32 million, the governor says we're going to fund 53%. In May, he said that, which was great, a huge percentage. It actually came in that they're only going to fund 51%, as I mentioned, but our budget was built on the 53%, which would give us a total LCFF dollar amount of $156,000,028. So when you open up that budget, you'll see that number right there in Fund 1.
That's not the right number, right? Because it came in less.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So now let's compare actuals to actuals, 2014-15 to 2015-16. The target stayed close to the same, a little bit less, which makes sense because we're in declining enrollment, so that's why the target has gone down a little bit. But the target should stay pretty constant. The minimum funding guarantee, or the floor, should rise each year until we hit that target, right? So you'll see the hold harmless amount last year was $127 million. For 15-16, it's now $139 million, and we should expect to see that rise each year. So last year, we received about $140.5 million in LCFF money. 15-16, we're projected at $156 million. So $15.5 million more dollars in LCFF revenue is what we're expected to get. Revenue comparison, we always like to show this so you can see how much we've received year over year. And it's a nice progression of receiving more money. I just thought the 08-09 revenue was interesting, considering 15-16 is the first year in this chart that will actually exceed the 0809 revenue. So, okay, now let's talk about, here's the money coming in, now let's talk about how we're going to spend it. Assumptions that we made was enrollment of 17,544. This is just based on the trend of declining enrollment that we've been having. Increased employer contributions, and there's some slides later that will get into this, but if you remember when I was here at first interim, the employer contributions are going to go up significantly from now over the next 6 years. So the increase from CalPERS, they kind of lessened the blow this first year, and then this percentage will go up a lot more rapidly after 15-16. So 15-16, it will be 11.847, or it's up 0.076. And CalSTRS is up 1.85% to 10.73%, and I've quantified that into dollars for you. Health and welfare costs assumed, I just put that number in there so you would know. Lifetime medical costs of $11.8 million. Hopefully this amount will remain constant. This is based on our actuary study. Labor-related costs for our certificated and classified members. And then we also assumed a deferred maintenance contribution of $1 million. Okay, so total expenditures mirror our total revenues. You can see they're going up each year in anticipation to match the more money that we are getting. And I'd just like to mention in our total revenue slide, there is $10 million of one-time money that we're receiving in 15-16 in mandated cost claims. So you'll notice revenue looks really high for next year. Contributions and encroaching programs. So the only difference between a contribution and a transfer, contributions happen within the general fund, where transfers happen to other funds. So special education and routine maintenance are both in the general fund, but they're restricted in the general fund. So these are programs that are they're either, special education is not self-sufficient, it doesn't bring in enough revenue to run the program, so we make a contribution of $14.8 million expected for next year. Routine maintenance doesn't have its own revenue stream. It's a mandate next year in the law that you have to contribute 3% of general fund expenditures to that resource. And so that's $5.8 million. I know Mr. Jin always likes to ask about the percentage of special ed funding that comes from this contribution. And that is, so this $14.8 million is 55% of the cost of running that program. Well, the 45% is funded from the state, and the contribution is the remaining. So transfers, this is transfers from the general fund to other funds. So there's a transfer, I'll get to the cafeteria last, deferred maintenance, that's the $1 million that we mentioned, that's Fund 14, that will be transferring from deferred maintenance, which is different than routine maintenance. The retiree benefit bridge fund, that contribution is made to Fund 71. And then to the cafeteria fund, it's happened last year in 2013-14, this fund was not self-sufficient. So the general fund had to make a contribution to cover the costs of running that program. We expect that 15-16 may be the same in that it will not be self-supporting, and that general fund contribution will have to be made again in an estimate of $150,000. And these are all estimates. So fund balance. Comparing fund balance of 2014-15 to 2015-16, we are expecting this year that we'll end around $34.9 million, and next year $41.9 million. Or in percentages, 19.4 is the expected for 14-15, and 21.5 is the expected for 15-16. When we start talking Prop 2 in a later slide, we'll talk a lot about fund balance. So just kind of keep these percentages in mind for when we get there. So components of ending fund balance, and there's something, our statutory requirement of our reserve for economic uncertainty, which is 3%, that totals $5.9 million. There's the committed funds that I spoke of, which is for these various categories, and then assigned, which is less restrictive than committed, which is for lottery, instructional materials, and other various items. So there are 3 certifications, as you probably all remember, which negative means you will not be able to meet your financial obligations if they come due. Qualified, it means that you may or may not be able to meet your financial obligations if they come due. And positive, which is where we are, is that we will, based on our projections, be able to meet our financial obligations for not only this year, but 2 subsequent years out. And we've maintained these positive certifications thanks to, the wonderful leadership from the board through all of the hard times. Most districts are back on the positive route now, but it was quite a while when we were. Okay, the items that will impact our budget that I want to make sure that we all keep in the back of our mind for going forward. The state budget and what actually happens with the state is always an impact. Our declining enrollment, keep that in mind, where our numbers actually come in and do affect our revenue directly. Our unduplicated count of pupils, so all of this is based on an assumption that those will fall into that category. There are huge dollar amounts in that supplemental concentration grant money, and so wherever that unduplicated count comes in directly affects that also. And this is not like ADA. ADA is the higher of current year or prior year. Unduplicated count is an average, so this year will affect our funding. Staffing will affect our budget. Negotiations, we obviously have to see what 15-16 will bring, since there were no assumptions built into that budget for 15-16 negotiations. And health and welfare costs, where those actually come in, will also impact this budget. And then always the unexpected and unanticipated expenditures. So looking ahead, as I mentioned, CalSTRS, the employer contribution, you'll see, goes from 8% to 19% in 6 years. And so this is going to highly impact every, not only district, but district. And then you'll see PERS is all employers that employ